So I'm actually listening to the audiobook of this because I've mentioned this probably in some of my vlogs before, but I have really bad eyesight and I get really bad migraines, and reading font this tiny, although I can do it, I can read it, it gives me migraines and I can only do little bits at a time. Obviously, I want to read this fast as possible, so I'm listening to the audiobook, which I'm kind of sad to say doesn't really work for me. The audiobook narrator, I don't know, the way that she's not terrible per se, but the way that she does like certain male voices or the dragon's voices, or even the way that she talks sometimes, it's just like she talks it a little bit, she makes it a little bit too angsty, too much, she has too much edge. It's just like, it's very noticeable. So that kind of throws me through a loop, and I would love to wait for the graphic audio version of this because I felt like that was probably the best audio version, but that doesn't come out for a while. I guess I'm just gonna listen to the regular old audiobook. So I started yesterday afternoon. I'm already 10 chapters in. I have not been listening as much as I thought I was going to be. The first 9 chapters were basically picking up where Iron Storm left off. Iron Flame, I keep mixing up the two. Iron Flame left off. So we're basically like, it's a day later that we're dealing with things, and it's just, there's a lot of stuff happening. There are 2 things that kind of pulled me out of the story. And the first being that Fourth Wing and Iron Flame were school settings, but now that we are in, like, basically they're in war, they're at war times, they're away from the school, they're not even at the school, they're in a different place, and basically shit is happening. Historically, when you're training to be a soldier or a fighter, warrior, or whatever, you do have your training, but once that war actually starts, there's no more training, there's no more school, class is over with, you're learning as you go. And I'm finding very jarring that these characters are still going to class and still have teachers. Like, it's silly to me. The second thing is that there's this one character, and he was in both the first 2 books, and he was always a pain in the ass. Like, he was always a thorn in Violet's side. But like, it's coming to the point where I'm just like, don't you have anything better to do than bother this like 19-year-old girl who obviously has shit going on, and you know, she's more powerful than you, but yet you're like picking on her and trying to get her into trouble? Like, it's just kind of stupid. So those were like the 2 things that I'm just like, come on. The second update is I picked up Glint last night, and I just, honestly, I was not planning to pick it up. I was going to wait until I was done this book, Onyx Storm. I cannot remember that title for the life of me. Onyx Storm. I was going to wait until I was done Onyx Storm before picking up Glint. But honestly, I just kept thinking about it. I kept thinking about it, and I'm like, I need to know what's going to happen. So I picked it up last night. And this book is actually bigger than Guild by like, I think 200 pages or something like that. And I managed to read 15% last night. And like I mentioned before, I am not a fast reader, not by any means. And I also get very easily distracted. So I'll read a chapter, stop mid-sentence, get up, get a glass of water, go get a snack, check my phone, and then jump back on. I can understand that reading pace may be painful to somebody, but I like it, whatever, it works for me. So I managed to read 15% with those slow and steady reading habits in place. These books read so fast, but they're not terribly written. She's actually a surprisingly good author and writer. Like, especially in this one, I've noticed a definite change and improvement in her writing style. She writes almost like very lyrical, and it's a nice writing style. I like her writing style. I have more appreciation for it, especially after reading Broken Gods by Amber Nicole. Biggest disappointment so far of the year. I talked about that in my last vlog. But anyways, yes, so really, really bingeable. I am really curious to see where this story goes. And I do see that Aren's perspective is definitely opening up to the world around her instead of what she was brainwashed in her gilded cage. I just realized that this is the intro to my vlog video, and it's really long. Anyways, welcome to the vlog. Holy shit. It is fucking cold. So that's probably like, what is it? Like 5 Fahrenheit. Do you ever have days where you have like so much to do and like to the point where it's kind of overwhelming, and then all you want to do is sit down and like read and kind of block the world out? And I don't know, I'm having one of those days where I don't want to do anything, and I feel really guilty for not doing anything because I have a bazillion things to do. But all I want to do is sit down and read Glint. You know what's confusing about that series? First of all, the covers look almost identical, and the names are almost identical. Like, it's just, I don't know how I'm going to keep all of them in my head. Anyways, that's all I want to do is read that book and just sit under this blanket that I got for Christmas and have the fireplace on and just block out the cold, cold world. So we have a gas fireplace, and I've had to keep it on pretty much all day for like past 2 days, because I'm afraid that our old furnace is just going to break down. So luckily we have that extra heat source. But yeah, it's cold. You can feel it on the ground. You can feel it on the walls. It's not nice. So I don't know. That's my weird update right now. I'm going to drink a little bit of a coffee and read a couple chapters and just kind of enjoy the quiet time before I have to go pick up my kids. So it's been probably about 2 weeks since I last did my update. If you are on my Discord, you know that I got COVID and kind of took me out for 2 days. It actually took out my entire family. Well, it's not confirmed that it's COVID because we no longer have COVID tests here, but I get this certain symptoms. There's certain symptoms that I got with COVID, and I've had COVID twice. It's probably like my 3rd time having it. And the first symptom is I get this like weird like stomach thing, like stomach pain. It's like I've never had it any other time. I just call it the COVID stomach pain. And then the second is my taste buds go crazy. Like everything tastes like crap. And the first time I got COVID, I lost my sense of taste for about a year. At this point, I'm used to it. It's just really annoying. And the third one is I get a headache like right at the back of my neck. So I got all those things. So to me, that says COVID. Plus my husband and my 2 kids, we all had kind of sort of different symptoms. And that's another like red flag. So after that, we had a bunch of unfortunate things happen in our house. And then the last thing is my husband got into a minor car accident the other day. Luckily, nobody was hurt and the car can be fixed, but still it sucks. And yeah, it was very stressful. That's why I haven't been updating for the past 2 weeks. I don't know if you noticed, but I have new bookshelves in a new area. We were going to originally put the bookshelf there behind the camera. You can't see. But in order to do that, we would have had to move things around, like live in a small house like I have. But when you do one thing, you have to do 5 other things. So in order for us to move that bookshelf down, we were going to have to move the couch. It was just going to be this whole thing. Since I stole my husband's bookshelf that was in the office for like my clothes, he's like, listen, I need a place to put my books. So why don't I put some of my books upstairs and we'll get you some bookshelves to go downstairs. And right now they're in an area that was actually designed to be a reading nook, but it was taken over by my kids. Wow, this is a really long-winded explanation. I'm so sorry, guys. Long story short, we had a little bit left over in our budget for this rearranging thing, and we were able to get some bookshelves from IKEA. So obviously you can see that I'm still working on it. I need to go to HomeSense and some thrift stores in order to get some new decorative displays because I want to get some new stuff because a lot of my stuff is pretty old and I don't care about it anymore. I want this bookshelf to reflect me and my personality, and that's probably why you're seeing my Sailor Moon Funko Pops. Oh, that fell down. And fruit baskets along with Children of Time and like 3 Body Problem and just, yeah. It's a work in progress, but yes, I'm very excited to have this as my new filming psyched. I'll probably give it a little bit of a bookshelf tour once this is all done and looks nice and presentable. So I don't really have anything else to rambly update. So I will talk about books. And I don't remember the last update I gave. It was probably Onyx Storm. Probably. Pretty sure at this point everybody knows I've DNF'd Onyx Storm. It was on my January wrap-up, and I've talked about it in Discord as well. But in my January wrap-up, I mentioned that I may continue on later on, and I plan to continue on once the graphic audio is available. And since I filmed that, I have decided that I will not be continuing on with the series. I'm not saying never, like never, never. I'm just saying maybe I'm going to stop until the whole series is done. I actually already watched some spoiler videos regarding the book, and I'm really glad that I didn't waste a week of my life reading it. So yeah, I watched the recap. I watched a couple of recaps actually, and it just seems like there was a lot of stuff happening and it confused a lot of people. Like there was a lot of weird characters that were introduced and it's like, oh yeah, don't you know this character? He's been here all along. It's like, no, this character has not been there all along. And there's like a lot of like information and reveals that were revealed that literally had no impact on the story. And then once it was revealed, they're like, okay, anyways, on to the next thing. So I know what happened at the end. And I don't care. But like I said, never say never. Maybe one day I will pick it up and reread it. So on to what I'm reading. So I've actually already talked about this in my February TBR, but I am reading The Failures by Benjamin Lyer. I'm probably about 200 pages in, and I'm listening to the graphic audio version through Everend. There's like the people who are doing like the voice, like the characters' voices and conversations. But then there's like the main narrator who narrates everything in between. And I struggled with that at first, but I gotten used to it and I'm really freaking enjoying this book. Holy shit. Like, it is so good. This book is not for everybody, and it is in a really weird, like, sci-fantasy kind of world. So this is not a book for everybody. And it is a bit on the crasser side. Like, there's a lot of swearing. I mean, not to me, but some people might find it offensive. But I really enjoy this author's writing style. I especially love the humor in this. It took me a really long time to finite my reading taste, and I think I've like really narrowed it down to certain books that work for me and certain books that don't. I'm sad to say that some of these like epic fantasies that everybody talks about and everybody loves, they're just not for me. And they're not the type of book that I am really drawn towards. It sucks, because I want to love what everybody else loves. But at the same time, I have to be true to myself. And I'm now realizing that I love very confusing plots and very, I don't want to say morally great characters, because honestly, everybody's a little bit morally great. I just like reading about realistic characters who aren't perfect, who aren't amazing, who aren't the nicest people in the room, who aren't the worst person in the room. I want to read about that. I want to read about somebody that I can actually relate to. Like, another thing that I look for is the humor. I really like a good humorous book, and it doesn't have to be like stand-up comedy funny. It just has to be like witty and well done and not like Brandon Sanderson humor, if you know what I mean. This book reminds me so much of the Locked Tomb series, which is like one of my favorite series of all time. Even the worlds is very kind of a little similar, not exactly like, but it's very like gritty and like mechanical. So those things combined with like the humor, the confusing story, and the kind of like the setting, just, I have a feeling that this is going to be a 5-star read. So today is Friday, and I hope to have the audiobook finished up by the end of the weekend, because I have a really packed schedule. I was telling one of my friends in Discord that I'm like, I'm a dum-dum. Like, I don't know why I piled on so many like big audiobooks lately. I was feeling very ambitious at the time. I hope to finish this out by the end of the weekend. And when I finish this out, I will be picking up Hyperion. So I did mention this in my February TBR that I'm going to be reading a chapter in between audiobooks, and I'm going to read this slowly throughout the month. And like I said, each chapter is like 100 pages long. It is sci-fi, but it's very different from the failures, like very different. And I really like how it's sort of like a collection of short stories that are like woven together. I really like that type of format. And they're kind of like cautionary tales almost. At least the first one was. Those are my two audiobooks that I'm listening to. I haven't had much time for physically reading because of everything that's been going on, but I do want to get back into it because I've kind of fallen into like a social media hole, and I want to get out of that. I don't want to go into social media anymore. I'm trying to really limit the time that I spent mindlessly doom scrolling. And also I'm kind of finiting my YouTube watching as well. I think for a while I was watching just a lot of random content, and I was watching different channels, and every time I watched some channel, someone would talk about a book and be like, oh, I want to read that. And then I realized that like, I'm just really easily convinced to read books. Like I get pumped up, and I'm so easily like excitable, I guess, when it comes to books. So I'm trying to limit that. And I really want to focus on like channels that I connect with and that I have similar reading taste to, and also channels that don't consume books for the purpose of consuming books. No shade at anybody who loves to just read 24/7. Like, that's amazing that you can do that. I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm falling behind, especially since I have my own channel and I don't read as much as a lot of people do. You know, I maybe read more. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm getting at. I want to get back into physically reading, and I'm probably going to start Glow again because I did actually start. I think I was on like a third or fourth chapter. So I'm going to start this. I'm reading the ebook. Oh, I forgot to show you guys this. So I got a bunch of gift certificates for Christmas, and I was really much very into The Played Prisoner, so I got the entire collection. I'll show you down below. But one of the books came signed. That's fun. So I'm have a lot on my plate right now, but I really am enjoying everything I'm reading. So that's amazing because last month was not the best and it didn't end the best, but I'm very happy that things are working out right now. I'm really rambling. I think I need food. So I'm going to stop this update now and I'll check back with you guys in a little bit. It's been a couple days, and as you see, I've decorated the shelf. There is real plants here. I will be replacing them sadly with fake plants because unfortunately where this is positioned, it won't get enough light to grow and keep a real plant alive. So unfortunately we got to go to IKEA and get some fake plants because I believe they have pretty good options of fake plants. So that's what that is. A little bit of tidbit of information about me. A couple of years ago, I actually owned my own plant company. I imported plants from Thailand and sold them on my website here in Canada. And it did pretty well. I had to shut it down during COVID, and for personal reasons, I just shut it down. I have a ton of imported weird plants in my house. Some I've gifted and given away or sold off, but majority of them I had. At one point, I think I had over 200 plants in my house. So this one is actually a 100-year-old Christmas cactus that I got from my mom. So, I mean, it's a baby of the 100-year-old plant, but yeah. I'm going to talk about the books that I read this week and I'm currently reading. And then I'm going to do a bit of a quick bookshelf tour because it's just easier for logistics for moving camera and such like that. I finished The Failures by Benjamin Lyer. This book took me a really long time to read. Not a really long time, but a little over a week. And I listened to the graphic audio, which was phenomenal. But I do have to say, the graphic audio is a teeny weeny bit of a spoiler because there's different narrators for each character. If you have a very keen ear for certain voices, it may be a little bit of a spoiler. So this book was a ride, and it was a fun, crazy ride. Probably I haven't been this confused and completely lost in a story since I read the Locked Tomb series. This one has more of a like Dark Tower kind of feel to it. It won't be for everybody. This book will not be for everybody. I can say that right now. There's a very type of sense of humor in here that will not hit with a lot of people. And also the fact that it is not like I said before, it is not a linear story, so it is very confusing. But you have to trust the process and trust the fact that Benjamin Lyer has an idea in his head and he gets you there in the end. And yes, the ending is not the ending because I think it is a trilogy, so there is a lot of questions that have not been answered, but there are a lot of questions that were answered, and they were answered in the most satisfying freaking way ever. Loved it. I probably would say this is more on the fantasy side than the sci-fi side. It's like more like a steampunk kind of sci-fi. So you're not in space or anything like that. So it's got like the technology, but it's very much in a fantasy world. So honestly, if you like the Dark Tower, if you like the Locked Tomb series, and if you like almost even Hyperion, because I'm currently reading that now and I see a lot of similarities, I think that you will really, really enjoy this. I'm so excited to continue on with the series. I don't know when the sequel is coming out, but I'm keeping an eye out and I will definitely be pre-ordering that. Since I finished it yesterday, I've been like thinking about it and I haven't quite decided what I'm going to be rating this. So it's sitting between about 4.5 to 5 stars. There was a little bit in the middle where I started getting a little bored. This is probably just a me thing, but I felt like at that point, I was just really craving it to be more of a linear story. So yeah, like I said, it's like sitting between 4.5 to 5. So probably 4.75 if we're going to be really accurate. I'm really excited that this book worked out for me and I have high hopes for the future of the series. Okay, so the second update is that I am listening to the audiobook of Hyperion currently because I just finished The Failures. And I'm just trying to find the page that I'm at. Currently, I'm listening to the 3rd chapter. The 2nd chapter was quite quick, and I actually finished it while I was getting ready today. I'm probably about like a little less than 200 pages in. The second story didn't really work for me as well as the first story did. I kind of was very disinterested in it. But the ending of it was very interesting. I do have to say, though, that Dan Simmons has a very similar writing style to Stephen King, where, you know, it's very interesting. There's a lot of things going on. And then randomly there will be like some weird sexual scene or comment within the book that just totally takes me out of it. And it's kind of in a very... The only way I can explain it is in a very Stephen King way. Although I do like Stephen King's writing style, I feel like that part of his writing really grosses me out. I don't like it at all. It's just the way it's set. I don't know how to explain it. I really do love how each chapter is written different from the chapter before because it is following a different character. I think he's done that amazingly well. He's really captured each character and making them like jump out on the page. I will be continuing this book for the rest of the month, and like I said, I'm really enjoying it. The third book that I'm reading is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I believe it's Kaylee, right? Although I did have this book included on my 20 series to read in 25, I think it was 20 series. Anyways, whatever. I included it in a video saying that I wanted to read it in 2025, and I was going to hold back on it. But a bunch of people in Brittany's Discord, Books with Brittany, I'm part of her Patreon, decided to pick it up. So I'm like, you know what? I have it on Kindle. I can grab it for free. I can pick it up. And I did need a little bit of a break in between the Plated Prisoner series before I got burnt out on that. This story originally grabbed my attention because it was kind of like a dark kind of gothic story about a necromancer that lives in New Orleans, I guess around the turn of the century, the 19th century. I really liked the first few chapters, but once she actually got to the competition, I found that my attention was really starting to dwindle. And it's not because it's not well written, because I think it's very well written, except for the modern dialogue. I feel like the modern dialogue really, really takes me out of it. At first, like the first chapter, I actually thought that it was in modern times until she mentioned a horse-driven carriage, and I'm like, wait a minute. So it is well written. I really do like the story. I think the character is very interesting because she has like almost an OCD kind of a tick thing happening with when it requires to like knocking on things and like having to do certain things when something happens. Really like all of that. I'm at chapter 9 right now, and we were introduced to a character, and I think he's like the love interest. And the moment that I realized that this guy is going to be like the love interest, I instantly thought of Casper the Ghost, the live action movie from the 90s. I was obsessed with that movie for the longest time. My sister the other day actually made fun of me, and she's like, remember when you used to watch that movie on repeat? Like, obsessed with it. I don't know why. I think it is because at the end, the ending is why I was like, ah. So that obviously sparked my interest again. And even though I'm not really crazy about trial books, I think I'm really enjoying this so far. But like I said, my momentum has kind of slowed down, but I do hope to read it by the end of the week. So we'll start with the top shelf here. This is my Broken Binding editions and, you know, kind of some of my sci-fi, Hyperion. Most of these I have not read. I will be perfectly honest. I've read these two, this one, and that one. Oh, and these two. So yeah, I have a lot of reading to do here. Going down the next shelf, we have my sci-fi, one of my favorite books, Children of Time. I love this book and the rest of my Adrian Tchaikovsky books. I've read pretty much all of these except for Alien Clay, City of Lost Chances, Ogres, just these three actually. And Paradise 1, Three Body Problem, I still need to get to these two. The next shelf is kind of like my British paperbacks. Obviously Joe Abercrombie, Dandelion Dynasty. I still need to read The Paper Menagerie. This is here, the Gunslinger's here so I can remember to continue on with it. Malazan also, I want to continue on with this series, and my cute little Hoya. The next two shelves are kind of self-explanatory. This is all my Brandon Sandersons. I've read all of these except for the second Skyward book. Oh, it's totally wrong. And the Frugal Wizard's Guide. I probably will never read that book, but anyways, I own it. Sorry for the awkward shot. The last shelf is my manga shelf. I'm a huge fan of Inuyasha, like honestly love it. Clover, like one of my favorite Clamp series, and Noragami. I'm actually kind of slowly reading through that series. And then over here is another one of my favorite manga series, the same mangaka as Inuyasha. It's Maison Ikiko. I know I'm probably saying that wrong. Taylor, you can totally correct me. And so yeah, it's one of my favorites. Absolutely love it. And then up here is my Robin Hobb shelf. I'm not the hugest fan of the Fit series, but I do really enjoy Robin Hobb. But one of my favorite series of all time is The Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb. So I do want to continue on with the series, but yes, like I said, this trilogy is probably one of my favorite series. This is one of the things that I bought recently for the shelves, and the reason why I bought it is because it's completely wireless. The light bulb inside is chargeable, which for me, that's just crazy. Also, it comes with this awesome remote that I can turn it off, change the lighting, change the color. It's awesome. I'm obsessed with it. The shelf up above is also a bunch of my favorites. Like I've mentioned before, the Locked Tomb series, one of my favorites. Sword of Kaigen, love this book. The Withering Flames trilogy, love this book series. And also, I haven't read The Talon Sister, but I feel like it just needs to go with this. And up at the very top is my Rob J. Hayes collection. The War Eternals is also another one of my favorites, and I really do need to get to these. I guess it's like the beginning of 3 different trilogies, so I really do need to get to them. Moving over here is a shelf. Probably going to have a bunch of plants and eventually fill it up with books. I had to move the Christmas cactus out because it needed to get some light, so I will be eventually moving the other one as well. So yeah, it's just kind of a shelf of limbo right now. So right here is another one of my favorite books, Rhapsody by Elizabeth Hayden, and the entire Symphony of Ages series. I have only read up to about here, and I have been meaning to read Requiem for the Sun. They are not my favorite series, but this one book holds a special place in my heart. Along with this trilogy, and I believe it's The Kingdom of Old Worlds. I can't remember the name of it, but yes, starting with Sabril. I love this YA series. I do want to reread it soon. So down here is just kind of like a random shelf of a bunch of books that I love. The David Bad trilogy is also one of my favorite series. I have not read The Adventures of Mimi Al-Sarafi. I've been waiting for the sequel, but I haven't heard. Is this a series or is this a standalone? Because if it's a standalone, then I'm just going to read it soon. Book of Azrael, loved this book last year. Did not love the sequel, unfortunately. Fortunately, you can't really see it, but this is The Iron Crown by Ella McRae, the Broken Binding edition. Absolutely love it. This is another fun series. This is the Glaceon trilogy series by Stacey McNewan. Really enjoyed this romantasy series. Very different from anything I've read before. Obviously, Laini Taylor, one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite series, one of my favorite books. I just love Laini Taylor, and I'm waiting for her to come out with a new book. Waiting. And another one of my favorites, it's not like a top 10, but it's definitely a favorite series. That is the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy by Django Wexler. A really fun sci-fantasy series, very much inspired by Star Wars. So if you're a Star Wars fan and you're looking for something, I highly recommend this series. The next shelf is probably my favorite on this entire bookshelf, and it's not because of the books, it's just aesthetically pleasing in my mind, especially since all these spines like match up. It looks so good. And this is a new addition to the shelf, and I have been meaning to continue on with the series. I can't remember what it's called, but I gotta continue on with Glow of the Everflame. So if you've been on my channel for a while, this next shelf may actually really surprise you, because I have talked about in the past how I'm not the biggest fan of Sarah J. Maas, but yet I have all of her books. Now hear me out. Most of these are first editions, and I started reading this series probably when it came out almost 20 years ago. Maybe not 20 years ago, maybe it was like 15 years ago, but still. So I did really enjoy the series. I actually loved it enough to continue on with the rest of it. I mean, these are like the OG Thorn of Court and Roses covers. So I mean, like, yeah. So these two series I absolutely love. Did not really love this series. This one was okay. But yeah, these two books, no thanks. Found that her later books just kind of lost that je ne sais quoi. And this is another one of my favorite series. This is Under the Night Sky trilogy by Veronica Rossi. This is like a sci-fantasy series that nobody ever talks about, and I fucking love it. Like, absolutely love it. I want to reread that as well. And then down below is my Fruits Basket and Sailor Moon shelf. I love both of these series. They have meant so much to me, and I will love them forever. I don't care what anybody says about them. And then my random basket of Funko Pops, including She-Ra. If you know who She-Ra is, this is the OG one. I'm not the biggest Funko Pop fan. I don't really like how they look, but I like having them, if that makes sense. So we're going to get like a foot of snow, maybe 2 feet. I don't know. Like, we're supposed to get 23 centimeters one day, and then another day we're gonna get like 20 more centimeters, and like that's a lot of snow. So my family and I have kind of like prepared ourselves that this weekend is just gonna be an indoor weekend. So we got lots of things planned. We got some puzzles we can do. We did a grocery shop, make sure we're like all set up to sit at home and weather out the storm, which I'll be honest, I'm kind of excited for. I'm kind of excited to just sit at home and not have to go out. Maybe that's just me. So I do have a bit of a reading update. The first one is I'm like halfway through the 3rd chapter of Hyperion, and I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden there was like a shift, I guess, in the story, and all of a sudden I'm just like, I was so enraptured in the story, and I found that the narrator was extremely hilarious. I went from like being not very interested into being like super interested. I don't know if it's going to be a 5-star or a favorite book, but we'll see. I'm not even halfway through. The second update is that I decided to put Phantasma down for now. There's nothing wrong with the book. I didn't dislike it. I wasn't as caught up as I wanted to be. Basically, every time I put it down, I forgot about it instantly. I didn't think about it at all. And the only reason that I kept remembering to read it was because I'm like, oh yeah, I said I was going to read it. So it wasn't because I wanted to read it. I was just reading it for the sake of reading. And I don't want to do that this year. This year, I want to walk away from that. If I'm not feeling a book, if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not saying that I'm not going to read, 3-star books. It's going to happen. I'm just saying that if I can pinpoint already that I'm not going to enjoy it and I'm not having fun, I'll put it down for now and then pick it back up when I'm feeling it. So that's just kind of where I am. Also, I did find that it did kind of read a little bit on the YA side. And yes, there's swearing, and yes, there's like sexual content in it, but honestly, some YA series have that anyways. It's just the way that the structure happened, it just seems so familiar. and it reminded me a lot of the Caraval series. And also it kind of reminded me of the beginning of Throne of Glass. If you read that series, you kind of know that first book had the same kind of YA and competition. So it just kind of reminded me of all that. It is interesting, and I did enjoy the characters. I wasn't drawn to it. I may decide to pick it up closer to the release date of the sequel. I believe it's coming out in the spring, so maybe I'll pick it back up in a month or two. But like I said, I was enjoying it. I just wasn't loving it. I wasn't invested. So I decided to pick up a sort of similar book, and that is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillick. The main reason why I picked it up is because I own a physical copy of it, and I'm trying to read through my physical copies. Even though I'm having really bad sight problems lately, it's old age. I can sugarcoat it and say whatever. It's just my eyes are going to shit, and I need to go to an optometrist, and I'm just not doing it because I'm stubborn. So anyways, I just need to get reading glasses. That's all it is. But I can read this one because the font is not too small. Some of the books that I have, the font is like teeny weeny, and that's like, I can't do it. If I have bright enough lighting, I can read this, no problem. So I picked it up. I read the first chapter last night. I love it. This is exactly what I wanted to read. This is the type of romantasy that I wanted to read. And there is a difference between a book like this and a book like Phantasma. They're not saying that either one is better. It's just a different tone. This one has a more mature kind of ethereal. No, it's not ethereal. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word, but there's a word for it, and this one has it. There is a type of romantic fantasy, and I feel like this one kind of falls into the more mature type. I don't know. I've only read one chapter. Don't quote me. I could go completely downhill after that first chapter. I'm going to be reading this for the next few days, and I'm hoping to really get lost in this like creepy gothic world, because honestly, this book I think was what I was craving. So I think right now is a good time to end the vlog. If you have made it all the way to the end of the vlog and you don't really have anything to say, but you want to leave a comment, leave I want to think of a creative one. Leave a plant emoji for the plants on my shelves. If you like this video, please think about liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.